start then. Okay. Now my name is, hang on. Oops. My name is Ming Hung Wong. I associated with the Soil Health Laboratory, Southern Federal University in Rostock-on-Don. At the moment, I'm in Hong Kong, the Education University of Hong Kong. I am really very glad that Professor Ivan Wasniu invited me to give this talk in this important meeting. Now, what I would like to do for about 20 minutes, well, 25 minutes or so, to talk about management of toxic chemicals to enhance environmental and health protection. Table of contents, I will talk about the need of monitoring and assessing all these toxic chemicals. And then eventually I will talk about all these toxic chemicals, some new chemicals, emerging chemicals of concern, and then the need of better management strategies. And then I will cite some examples about all these emerging chemicals of concern. Now, the UNESCO has mentioned there are 3 pillars for sustainability: social, environmental, and economic. These 3 are very important. And environmental sustainability is the most important one. And if you have a chance to read this article published in 2017, the Lancet Commission on Pollution and Health, it mentioned pollution is the largest environmental cause of disease and premature death in the world today. Chemical pollution has become a great and growing global problem. Now, this is a very good article. I advise you to read it. And I have borrowed a figure here about the number of deaths, 1 million people, all forms of pollution in 2015. So chemical pollution is really a global concern. Now, if you look back to the history, you can see human beings are very clever. We kept on inventing new chemicals. Give you an example, DDT was first synthesized in 1874. And then eventually PCBs and all that chemicals, the one who invented DDT received a Nobel Prize. But eventually they found out DDT can kill all kinds of organisms. So eventually DDT was banned, PCB was banned, and there were several international conventions like Basel Convention, Rotterdam Convention, Stockholm Convention on POPs, and then more recently, the Global Treaty on Mercury Pollution. I think we have problems with these chemicals. That's why we want to control them worldwide. Now, back 20-something years, in the year 2000, well, 2000 and 2003, we had a worldwide project. I was so lucky. I was appointed the coordinator of Central and Northeast Asia, including China, Russia, Korea, and so on. So at that time, we were trying to monitor we try to assess these toxic chemicals, mainly POPs, persistent organic pollutants, DDT, PCB, dioxin, and so on, and also some toxic metals and metalloids, arsenic, cadmium, copper, and so on, and then some emerging chemicals of concern. These chemicals, we have been using them for a number of years, and then we found out they are not so safe. So that's why we call them emerging chemicals of concern. Flame retardants, PBDE, would be a good example. So we publish some regional reports. We have 12 regional reports, and then we combine the 12 reports into a global report. So I expect if you look at this website, you still find all these reports. But I must confess, during that time, we had difficulties. Well, 20-something years ago, we had difficulties comparing data, comparing all this information generated from different countries, and we used different methods of sampling, we used different methods of presenting your results and so on. So at that time, we looked at 10 POPs, persistent organic pollutants, pesticides, several pesticides, we call them chlorinated hydrocarbon pesticides. DDT is a good example. There are other pesticides very similar to DDT, 2 industrial chemicals, PCB and hexachlorobenzene, which is also used as pesticides. And then 2 unintended byproducts. We don't intend to produce them, but somehow when we burn our rubbish, the incinerators will generate dioxin and furans. They are very toxic. So in the end, we also try to nominate some new POPs that should be controlled in different regions. So eventually, different regions propose some new POPs to be controlled. And then eventually, the flame retardant and certain pesticides are added into the list. Now, these toxic chemicals, they share these common properties. They are very persistent. They cannot degrade so easily. Once it's emitted into the environment, they could be accumulated by living organisms. The concentrations will become higher and higher because of biomagnification. They cause genotoxicity, neurotoxicity. They are endocrine disruptors, and then they can travel long distance. Now, people will ask, now what happened? What shall we do? In fact, there are some international conventions trying to control them. So these are the existing control mechanisms for existing chemicals. We have Rotterdam Convention. Rotterdam is based in the Netherlands. They had the meeting held in Rotterdam, and that's why it is called Rotterdam Convention. They try to Rotterdam Convention notify final regulatory actions for ban or severely restricted chemicals. And then we have Stockholm Convention on POPs. There are Minamata on mercury, which is very recent, trying to ban all these toxic chemicals contain, well, all these products contain mercury. So for new chemicals, the Stockholm Convention, you can keep on adding new lists to be for control if they fulfill the properties I mentioned: persistent, toxic, bioaccumulation, travel long distance. Now, a group of Swedish scientists, they have done very good monitoring work. So throughout the years, since 1960s, they try to monitor all these toxic chemicals in human body. So they have chosen human milk for monitoring DDT, PCB, PCDD, which is dioxin, and then PBDE is flame retardant. Okay, so these 4 toxic chemicals, 3 of them are having a declining trend. So showing us the conventions are effective. So people in the bodies, these toxic chemicals are declining throughout the years. But if you see the 4th graph, the PBDE, flame retardant, there is a constant increasing trend. The concentration doubled every 5 years. It's double. That's why we have included PBDE for the control. Okay. Now, the story doesn't end like this. Recently, a few years ago, there were 2 laboratories in New York, I believe, New York. There are chemicals, they try to analyze some newborn babies. They find out their bodies contain over 200 industrial chemicals, 287 chemicals, 10 newborn babies, all these organochlorine pesticides, DDT, chemicals used in a wide range of consumer products. We use daily PFOS, flame retardant we talked about, PCB, and also chemical pollutants, because we burn our waste and then fossil fuel combustion, PAH, dioxin, mercury, lead, and so on. So we have problems. All these toxic chemicals kept on emitting into the environment. Now, in my own research, only 1 page showing my own research, I try to monitor the toxic chemicals in the environment. So if you look at this list, it will give you some idea. The chemicals we monitor throughout the years, they have been changing. So at the beginning, we try to look at heavy metals, mercury in China, flame retardant in China, e-waste, the toxic chemicals from e-waste recycling, all these toxic chemicals in soil treatment, whether the soil treatment plants are effective in treating all these toxic chemicals. And then more recently, if you look at the years of publication, more recently, we focus a bit more on these emerging chemicals of concern, new chemicals, PFOS, bisphenol A in China, PFOS, PPCP, pharmaceutical and personal care products like the shampoo, hairspray you use at home. Phthalates in China, phthalates very much related to plastics. All these problems with autism in children, seafood safety, microplastics eventually become a hot topic. Microplastics, people are working on microplastics worldwide. In Hong Kong, we were trying to work with the Red Cross. We have Red Cross, and we try to monitor all these toxic chemicals in the human blood. So try to monitor this DDT, this more kind of more traditional chemicals, as well as some new chemicals, emerging chemicals. I think that will give you a very good idea about the current status, all these chemicals you use in your daily life, whether these chemicals have entered into your bodies. So that would be a very efficient, very direct kind of monitoring. So what are emerging chemicals? We've been talking about traditional chemicals, emerging chemicals. Now these emerging chemicals, most of them are synthetic chemicals. They are not included in the existing human biomonitoring programs. We don't have too much information, so we are very concerned about these new chemicals. Now, if you want to ask what happened to these toxic chemicals, we use them daily. What happened to the fates of these chemicals, where they will end up? So in densely populated cities like Hong Kong, I live in Hong Kong, there are soil treatment plants. So soil treatment plants are receiving all these toxic chemicals from different sources, agriculture, open burning, people flushing things into the toilets, the consumer products, and so on. But bearing in mind, when we build our soil treatment plants, they are not meant to break down toxic chemicals. So we have problems. So all these toxic chemicals, we have a project commissioned by the Drainage Services Department in Hong Kong. They try to we try to monitor all these toxic chemicals in 2 different types of soil treatment plants. A lot of data, we have published a few papers. One sentence of conclusion,